Barb, you're muted. So if you could start over again for us, that would be great. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Should have asked somebody else, Megan.
No.
Megan McKenna is an internationally known author, theologian, storyteller, and lecturer. She has graduate degrees in Scripture, adult education, and literacy from the Graduate Theological Union and the University of California, Berkeley. She also has a master's in systemic theology from the Catholic University, Washington, D.C. But foremost, she is a lover of words, the scriptures, stories and tales, poetry, images and phrases spoken aloud, written down, and spun to make meaning, and how these both convert and transform us and bring meaning and hope to the world. For the last few years, Megan has been working with the First Nation elders and tribal leaders in Northwestern Canada on scripture, reconciliation, and restoration. She is so loved there that she's been invited to return later this year once the border opens. Megan has authored many, many books, among them my favorite, which is The Poor Will Save Us. Her latest book, which will be available in September, is Remember All I Told You, Volume 1, Cycle C, Lectionary Reflections, which is being published both by Veritas in Ireland and Clear Faith Publications here in the United States. I assure you that Megan's presentation will be thought-provoking, informative, and challenging. Megan has asked that I share with you that she wants this to be an interactive experience. So after she shares a story or a reflection, she will invite you to offer your questions or responses. May do this by either using the raise hand function on your Zoom menu or by writing your responses, questions, and comments in the chat area. I ask you now to welcome my very, very dear friend, Megan McKenna.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here. Zoom is not my favorite way of being with people, but we will try. I'm going to tell a story and I will do the scriptures, and then we will try to go back and forth. It will be very hard with the storytelling because I can't see you, I can't relate to you, you can't relate back, but we'll try. So if you notice I have my eyes closed when I'm telling the story, it's so that I can concentrate, right? We're going to talk about why do you look for the living among the dead? We're going to start off by talking about tombs, not our favorite topic, but most of us, and I'm not just talking about a tomb where you go and bury a body. Many people have talked to me over the phone and again on Zoom, saying that they feel like that they've been in a tomb. And when we would talk, I would say, well, not so much that you're in a tomb, but a lot of things have died and they really haven't been buried. And many of us are trying to come back to life to get out of the tomb. And so that's what we're going to talk about. One of the things, Dan Berrigan has a marvelous line that says, the tomb is empty. Go out there to the whole world. Resurrection begins in a tomb. And so a tomb may be a terrible place to be, but it is still the place where resurrection begins. To start with, I'm going to tell you a story. It's from the Maumani tribe, and they are from northwestern Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Canada. And it's a very, very old story, and it's called Turtle and Eagle. And the story hopefully will set us up for the rest of what we're going to talk about. Once upon a time, it was long, long ago, before there were any two-leggeds in the world, the Great Spirit made the earth and made all sorts of animals and fish and birds and set them free to roam throughout the whole earth. Every time God would look, he'd say, oh, this is good. This is really good. And things for a long while went well. But then one of the animals, in fact, one of the birds, the eagle, got bored and didn't want to just be flying around and whatever. He decided to play a game. And the game was that he would challenge one of the animals or a bird to a race. And whoever won the race would be the one who would take over. And the one who lost the race would be a slave to the winner. Well, since it was Eagle's game, he started out first. And he started out with Bear. And so he sort of cheated a little bit because Bear was just coming out of hibernation and Eagle beat him easy. And so the first slave was the bear. Then he went after Hawk. Then he went after all sorts of little creatures. Then he went after ones that were a little harder to do, animals, cats, all sorts of things. But after time, he had practically everybody. He beat them all, and they were all his slaves. They no longer were just free to roam around and to do what they wanted. They had to check in with Eagle for everything. Well, there were two holdouts, Turtle and Muskrat. They were good friends, and they lived in a pond, and they spent a lot of time hiding from Eagle. They'd keep a lookout, and if Eagle was anywhere near, he can see 10 miles away when he's flying, they all dive underwater, the two of them. Well, things went on, and they got used to being together and hiding out, though they felt bad for all the other animals and missed their friends. And one morning, Turtle woke up and had to have a talk with Muskrat. He said, "Muskrat, the Great Spirit came to me in a dream last night." "Oh," said Muskrat, "that's good. The Spirit came to you in a dream?" "Yeah. And he told me I was supposed to challenge Eagle to a race." "Oh," said Muskrat, "that's not so good. Why would he do that?" "I don't know," said Turtle, "but I'm supposed to go, and please come with me to Eagle and challenge him to a race." Muskrat said, "Did he tell you how to win?" "Yeah, he did. He told me how to win." "Ooh, tell me. He said, "No, I can't. I can't tell you. You're going to have to find out with everybody else." So next morning, Muskrat and Turtle left their hiding place, and Eagle spotted them right away and was surprised to see them. He knew they were two holdouts. And Turtle stuck his head out of his shell and said, "Eagle, I challenge you to a race." "Good," said Eagle. "I'm ready." He said, "But we're going to change the rules." "What?" "We're going to change the rules. Since it's only the two of us left, if I win," Turtle said, "everybody gets to go free. And if you win, Eagle, we'll all be your slaves." Eagle thought about it and said, "Okay, no way you're going to win. Okay." So word went out. The next day was the race. Muskrat was really worried about his friend. Turtle, nobody knows what he was thinking. He went back in his shell. Soon everybody came from everywhere, and they all decided they're going to root for Turtle. After all, he was their only chance. And then finally, even though they were cheering and saying, "Yes, let's go for Turtle, let's go for Turtle," one of the animals said, "Turtle couldn't beat a snail." "Yeah, but he's the only one we got. We got to root for him." So next morning, everybody showed up, Muskrat and Turtle and Eagle faced off. And Eagle was sort of strutting around and said, "I'll tell you what, you get to choose where the race starts and where it ends." "Oh, thank the Great Spirit. I'm so relieved." "Yes," he said, "I know exactly where the race is going to start, and I know exactly where the race is going to end." He looked at Eagle and said, "You're going to pick me up, and you're going to fly with me in your talons as high as you can go. And then you're going to drop me. And that's where the race starts. And whoever hits the ground first wins." Eagle didn't know what to do for a minute, but he was in front of everybody and said, all right. He still didn't worry about anything. And so he went over and in his great talons picked up Turtle and took off. They all watched the sky as Eagle went higher and higher and higher and higher, but they all heard Turtle yell, "Drop me!" And he did. And Eagle soared like an arrow And Turtle was like a rock, heading straight for the ground. In the beginning, they were neck and neck, right next to each other, but Turtle was falling faster and faster, and Eagle picked up his speed. At the last minute, Eagle did a surge, skimmed the ground, and went back up, and Turtle hit hard. Bam! And for a moment, there was quiet. And then everybody started cheering. Turtle had won. They were all free. Muskrat went over and looked, and Turtle wasn't moving at all. Eagle swooped back around, couldn't believe he lost and that everybody was now free. But Turtle wasn't moving. And Muskrat thought, is my freedom worth Turtle's death? And he went over and they all looked at him very quietly and hoping. And then after a long while, one little leg came out. Moved a little. And then another leg came out. And then there were 4 legs sticking out. And then his head came out. He was going round, round, and around. And Muskrat said, I think I better flip you over. So he pushed his friend over, and Turtle kind of got his bearings and his legs again. And everybody cheered and cheered and cheered. They were free. And they all went off to celebrate. After a while, only Muskrat and Turtle, the 2 friends, and Eagle were left. And Eagle came up to Turtle and said, you didn't do this on your own, did you? You had help. Turtle said, yes, I did. The Great Spirit helped me. I should have figured, said Eagle. Well, he told me I was going to win and that everybody would be free. But he never told me I wasn't going to die. I'm so glad to be alive. And Eagle said, oh. And then Eagle said he told me a few other things too. He told me that soon there are new creatures coming, not like us. They walk around on 2 legs. The first ones who come will be people of this land, Turtle Island. And they will listen to the Great Spirit. And they will believe in the dreams of creation that the Great Spirit gives. And things will go well for a while, though there'll be a couple of things going wrong here and there. It's hard for them all to get used to living with each other. But then later, more 2-leggeds are coming, and they're going to be not red, but white primarily. And they're going to use the eagle as their leader. And they will soon not be listening to the Great Spirit, but to themselves. Whereas the others will still listen to the Great Spirit as followers of Turtle Island. And then it'll happen again. Lots will be unfree, and only a few will have freedom. But the Great Spirit will come, and it will happen again. We will have to do the race to see who is free, because that's the dream of the Great Spirit. That not only does everyone on the earth roam free, the earth itself is free to live. Or so they say when they tell this story. So, Turtle and Eagle, why don't you take a minute just to be quiet and touch into your own psyche and your heart, and what does the story tell you? Usually there are 2 things that trigger what's going on in us. One is what bothers you in the story, really bothers you. And the other, what in the story says, yes, gives me hope, let's go for it. So just take a minute to think about it, and then we'll see how this works. We'll try to come back with a few of your comments. If you say a comment, then I will somehow try to respond to it. Okay. Okay, if someone wants to say something or ask a question or make a comment, either put it in the chat or talk to Heather. Or you can just talk to me. I don't know how that works, but.
I'm also going to scan. If somebody physically puts your hand up, if you're having a hard time with the chat or anything else, I will be scanning and looking for raised hands, and I'll go ahead and unmute you.
Okay, am I still on?
Yep, you're on, Megan, and so am
Okay.
I.
Okay, I just got one that says, and this is from Sandy Barron. What bothers me is the critical nature, cyclic, I think, cyclical nature of the story. Would just like one happy ending. Ta-da! Sorry. Just the tuna said, sorry, Charlie. We all want happy endings, but the reality is the happiness, the hope, the freedom is in the story and it's in our lives, but it's an ongoing, continuing thing. Whatever the ending will be at the end times, we can't imagine how good it's going to be. So it's happening in my life, it's happening in all of your lives, it's happening in nations, it's happening among tribes and groups of people. It keeps going, and hopefully it gets better and better and better. Somebody said, Janine Allen, the sacrificial redemption, doing is called with no guarantee of survival. Jesus, when he came, never said you weren't going to die. He didn't even say you weren't going to suffer. That our life is based on resurrection, but you got to die. There's no guarantee that we will survive the way we want, but we will survive the way God wants. Resurrection is a reality already in our lives, that no matter what dies in us, and when we actually do die, we already live resurrection life somehow in bits and pieces now. It's going to keep coming. Wisdom, Mary Ellen Quinn, listen to power greater than ourselves and make decisions based on the common good. And usually that wisdom is found in others. For Native Americans, even for the Jewish people, God's wisdom is primarily found in creation. The first book of Scripture, the first book of Revelation and wisdom is creation. All the earth, all the animals that God is revealing all the time. Reveals in Jesus, a lot more than most folk, but it's all out there. We all know the wisdom. It's a question of whether or not we put flesh on the bones and make it a reality in our lives. Next question. Why was Eagle able to set the rules for the race and have the animals accept them? Welcome to the human race. Why do some people just take over and the rest of the dumb people follow them? That's the way we are. Sort of the basis of who we are is how we are going to live for other people and lead. And every one of us makes that choice. And the way we deal with power is probably the underlying reality in all of our lives. Do we use it to lead others and to do good, to do justice, to make community, to live in solidarity? Or do we do it to destroy folk in every way we could possibly think of? It says here it's a very Christian parable. Well, you might think so, but not the Native people. Utilizing traditional Native American storytelling. I like the part about the animals cooperating to find freedom. The Native Americans had the wisdom before we did, long before Christians started walking the earth on two legs. In many ways, I love working with the Native Americans I worked with them for a long time, but really for the last 4 years. Their wisdom and how they have had to survive in spite of slavery, massacres, all of what is surfacing now, both in Canada and the United States and in the rest of the world that was colonized. Everything, they have the wisdom. They have always known the Great Spirit. Christianity is an extension of that, but it's always been there. I told the story for two reasons. One is that we are all connected. It's not, when we talk about anything that has to do with us, even death and resurrection, in Paul, we find that the entire earth, all of creation is groaning in expectation for the coming fullness of life. That we're not the only ones to experience resurrection. It's in our DNA, it's in everything. That resurrection is a way of life for everyone, and we have to lock back into that. If we're going to deal with anything among ourselves, among nations and races and people, men and women, and the earth, we have to realize that resurrection operates in everybody. And the second reason why I chose the story is I love the line, "He did tell me I was going to win and that everybody would be free, but he didn't tell me I was not going to die." That's, where we all stand in many things. As we've dealt with stuff over the last 17 months and before, with the virus, with lockdowns, with the death of our suffering of so many of our friends and relatives, he didn't tell us we weren't going to die, but we do set each other free. And so that was the reason why I told the story. And I told it to set it up for death and resurrection. Now we're going to try to do the scripture passage where the line comes from. Why do you look for the living among the dead? Again, take a moment and close your eyes and ask the Spirit and the Word of God to open your ears and open your heart and open your minds, maybe open your eyes to look at other people, that you will hear the Word as it lodges in your heart and soul. Now, with the Great Spirit stirring us and the Word to speak, the Lord be with you. And this is a reading from the book of Luke, from Luke, who wrote the Acts of the Apostles. And of course, it is the resurrection story. The Lord be with us as we speak. It was on the first day of the week, just as dawn was coming, the women went to the tomb carrying the spices and herbs that they intended to use to anoint the body of Jesus. They got to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away. And as they entered the tomb, they were shocked to realize there was no body of the Lord Jesus. While they stood there wondering what this meant and what to do, they suddenly realized there were two people standing beside them who said to them, "Why do you look for the living one among the dead? Don't you remember everything he told you? How the Son of Man would be handed over to those who do evil and injustice. He would be crucified and he would die, but he would rise again." And with his words, they remembered what Jesus had said. And then the women went back to the group, to the 11 and all the others. Mary of Magdala, Johanna, and Mary, the mother of James, told everything to the 11 and all those who were gathered. And the other women with them told the story too, but nobody believed them. They thought it was pure idiocy and nonsense. Nobody bought it. And then Peter got up and ran back to the tomb, but he didn't go in. He bent down, and all he could see was the white garments folded neatly. And he turned away from the tomb, stunned and disturbed. This is the good news, the gospel of the Lord. Now, again, you've heard the story before. What does the story do to you? What does it make you feel? Again, how does it just, what disturbs you? Usually that's the best question to ask. The good news is out to get us. It is pure subversive hope. And so what disturbs us is what gets in there better than anything else. So what disturbs you? And then what did you hear that you never heard before? So again, take a moment, get it into your head, and then we'll try to do some theology. Okay. I'm not surprised at the first response from Nancy. It's disturbing that the men didn't believe the women. All right. They didn't believe any of the other, women either. The women didn't believe the other women. One of the things about the gospel and anything we're going to talk about for the next hour or so is expect to be ignored. Expect not to be believed. Expect resistance. That has been the reality of the gospel since day one. You should expect people not to believe you. Our experiences of resurrection are not easily translated, passed on like poof. And so one of the things we need to start with is just because we've got the good news and we've staked our lives on it, we need to expect that other people are not going to buy it. Partly because they look at us and wonder, but again, it is a massive leap to believe in it. So we too have to, don't expect to be believed. Don't expect to be welcomed with open arms on anything we do that has to come from the gospel, from crucifixion, death, and resurrection. It was Peter who felt he was the closest to Jesus, might have asked, why was I not the one to first reach the tomb? Background for a little theology. Women controlled everything in Jewish life that had to do with birth and death. Right? And so they could go to the tomb to anoint the body for burial because that was part of the traditional culture. If the men went to the tomb, they were immediately in jeopardy because it was a political statement. The tomb had been, and the execution was by the Romans with, they had to make the decisions. And so in a sense, they did not go out of fear and whatever, but they went because it was something much larger. And so in that sense, the women, it's more important to know that the women who did go, they began with trying to do the strongest, most difficult corporal work of mercy. All resurrection, all life starts with corporal work of mercy. And we have three people who are mentioned, three women, Mary of Magdala, Johanna, and Mary, the mother of James. But traditionally, we know the names of 8 women. They're called the myrrh-bearing women in the Eastern Church. And they were if they were bringing the spices and herbs and wrappings, they figure it was 120 to 150 pounds they were carrying between them. And the corporal work of mercy to prepare the body of a condemned political criminal for burial would have excluded them from everything in Jewish society until they did atonement. So they started and did it, but the men had to take chances that the women didn't have to take. The detail of the linens being neatly folded, robbers would not have bothered. Something deliberate happened here. Even though I've heard the story over a lifetime, it still gives me goosebumps. Everybody looked for ways to not believe the story. And again, it's also said afterwards, yes, neatly folded. Obviously, he did not wake up, take his clothes off and fold them, and then redress in, his glad rags and walk out the door. Whatever happened is part of what resurrection is. We don't often think about what is it like to come back from the dead and come back from a death that utterly destroyed you physically, mentally, psychologically, every which way, and that this is the crucified and risen one. And so the folded garments are a sign that whatever happened was more than just he woke up and got off the slab and moved on from there. I don't know, other people, what bothers you in the story, but also what did you not hear before, or what got you? The two people who talk to them, I'm struck by what they say. The first one is, why do you look for the living one among the dead? When we go to do something, to live with what has happened, to live with injustice, to live with evil, to live with violence, to live with all the things that people have to cope with, suffering, poverty, inequality, where do we go to look for life? And oftentimes we do go, to places that are dead. Sometimes they're our own family, sometimes they're our own church, sometimes it's the people we live and work with. They're the ones that, that's not the place necessarily to find it. Usually the place to find it is the least likely place. The living one, especially if it's Jesus crucified and risen, is in the last place you'd expect him to be. Starting with anybody we call an enemy, starting with anybody we would not forgive, starting with anyone we're afraid of, starting with anybody who is, quote, the problem. And they are all of the people who have been victims of violence and injustice. That's where you find the living one. The living one is justice itself. And so we have to start asking ourselves, when we go to do things, where are we going? Who do we go to? Then he continues that remember everything he told you. And we don't. When we start to do something, we don't go to the word of the Lord, right? And that is where has got to be sort of the base we go off from. And we got to do it with others. We have a tendency, again, even among all the groups that work with Pax Christi and the church, it's me and God, not the rest of you turkeys, and that nothing can actually happen unless we do it with others. We know there are 3 women named. We know that there are at least 5 more from names in other accounts. There are lots of people. You got to do this together. We can't expect to do this in ones and twos. I love a line from Helen Prejean. She said, it took her a long, long time to realize that doing individual acts of kindness or justice wasn't enough. Remember Dorothy's line of the filthy, rotten system. It can only be dealt with and faced by people together. So we're told, remember the words, but then remember means put back together again. We need to get back together with people and do this together. Remember all that he shared with us, and it is based on dying. Anything we're going to change is based on dying and rising together. And it's very clear that before they leave the tomb, it says, hearing the words of the others triggered their memories. And it was like, oh yeah, now that you say it, other people have the answers, have the suggestions, have the things that'll push us out into reality. And so anything we're going to do when it comes to resurrection, when it comes to peacemaking, when it comes to justice, has to be done with others. And it begins with a dialogue. Even if other people are not going to listen to you, it's got to begin with dialogue. And keeping that in mind changes the way we talk and what we talk about and how we approach other people. But the first step to make resurrection a reality past my personal belief is dialogue with other people. It begins with befriending people who are usually strangers to us, unknown to us, or part of them. And when I was putting this together, I was trying to come up with I narrowed it down to 4 groups of people that should be dealt with, who should be met and dialogued with first. And the first group is within house church, but specifically within the Black community, the Asian community, the Native American community, the Hispanic community, the people who are not white Anglo-Catholics. That's who we got to start having dialogues with. That doesn't mean, oh, I go to the Black Mass, that's once a month or something. That's the way it is here. It has to be that we open a dialogue with people, and that, again, don't expect to be welcomed with open arms, and don't expect them to immediately say, oh, yeah, you got it right. Oh, yeah. Dialogue is hard work. So first, pick out who you're going to go to. And they're all in the neighborhood. They only went back to, the local folk who had gathered. The Black community and other communities within our church. The second group, and I picked them because my heart's with them, the Native Americans, the First Nations of Canada, the Native Americans here in the United States, but they are in every country that was colonized by Christians. Right? That's all of Central and Latin America. It's Australia, it's New Zealand, it's Africa, that the indigenous people have wisdom of the Great Spirit that we desperately need. And right now, it's been surfacing for the last 25 years, what's going on in Canada. Deb Haaland here in New Mexico is opening the issue for Native Americans here, and the church here, the white church here in the United States, that the same thing that happened in Canada happened here. And that justice, restitution, solidarity, and community with the Native peoples of the world is a good place to start about what is resurrection. They have lived and survived with grace through horrific deaths. The third group I would say is anybody who deals with healthcare. We have got to deal with universal healthcare for everybody all the time on everything. It is a right. It is one of the human rights in Pacem in Terris, the statement of the rights of justice. And we have got to start working with people in the healthcare system to make sure that that's a reality. We all talk about nurses and doctors and research lab tech people, and praise them, and we do music in their honor, but they need more than a living wage. They need to have their educations paid for. They need to have justice while they are doing what is absolutely essential around the world. And that is not going to go away. It's going to get worse. We haven't even begun to look at what COVID has done and revealed is already going on in our country and around the world. And the last group falls into all of them. The earth, basics, earth, air, water, fire, energy, those sorts of things. They are not only causing what is happening, it is injustice and violence that we are doing to one another and to the earth that is making all of this happen. No matter what group we start to dialogue with and to work with together in solidarity, earth is going to be part of the foundation because it affects us no matter what we're doing. We respond quick when it's a natural, quote, disaster, but the natural disasters are called by us, yours truly. And we have to look at that and make sure that we're doing that. they're the groups we might do it. I'm looking at some of the other things. Who will roll away the throne, discipleship. Yeah, anything by Chad Myers is great for background. And that's good because everything starts with education. No matter who we are, what our denomination is, how we relate to church, most of us have concentrated on our individual relationship with God, personal spirituality, self-knowledge, and we are the most selfish group of people you're going to run across. And we talk about solidarity, but it's my choice. I do this. We're more interested in devotion and retreats than we are in standing in solidarity, the corporate works of mercy or work for justice. We need to be honest about that. And so education is going to be, hey, you really want to know what's going on in the world a mile away from you? Let's, start and find out. And you don't go far. You don't have to go far at all. Education. The second thing is think long haul. The next question is we also need greater mobilization for children. Children whose needs and rights are violated in their youth, who possibly turn to violence. Children do what they do because of us. We are the cause of violence in children. We are the cause of injustice. We are the ones who need to make restitution and change. This is the long haul. The native peoples have a saying, every time you gather, you sit on the ground together with others and decide what to do and how it will affect the next 7 generations. We have to start thinking in terms of the long haul if we're going to get anything done. The next thing is practice. The women came and they were carrying with them 120 to 150 pounds of spices, aloes, wrappings, etc. It's hard work. You got to learn to do real practical basic things. And it has to do with food, clothing, medicine, healthcare, education, shelter, all sorts of things. And you got to start there. But we're not very practical. And the way to find out what is needed is from other people. Number one rule in any kind of organizing or working with others is, what do you think? Not, you want to know what I think? No, it's what do you think? What do you need? Where are you standing? And we got to be pragmatic. On a theological level, they always have to include its steps. Forgiveness, first forgive. And forgive doesn't make it go away. Forgive means acknowledge what the hell is going on, what you have done, what you haven't done, what you are doing still. And that means not just individually, but in collusion with others. And so we have to begin by an admission of what we've done. Call it examination of conscience, whatever you want to do, but we have to talk about forgiveness. Who needs to be forgiven, and and starting with us, who knows for sure that we need to be forgiven. Again, best thing to do is have other people tell you. Most of what we think we need to be forgiven for, peanuts. Other people will be very happy to tell us the truth about what we need to be forgiven. So forgiveness first, then reconciliation, which means to walk together again. It means make forgiveness mutual, that this has got to be a two-way street. The word reconciliation walking together again is literally as if you were in a 3-legged race. So you get together with whoever you're working with, tie 2 legs together, one of theirs and one of yours, and that's the way we start off. That whatever we're going to do, we're going to be that tightly bound together. Reconciliation. Then comes restorative justice. And again, it's another way of looking at it is how do you undo the harm that has been done? These are stages. Sometimes they overlap, but it's, again, long haul. Restorative justice, how do we undo the effects of what we have either allowed to happen or been a part of? And the last piece, we call it at atonement in old theology, but it's at one meant. communion, solidarity. Solidarity means whatever comes together, your bodies with everybody else's body. That's solidarity. Communion says not only is your body there, your heart, your mind, your soul, your spirit, your money, your prayer, everything is there as well. And so that has to be a part of what we're doing. That's a lot of theology. Why don't you, again, take a moment, talk to each other and respond. But the most important thing is they get out of the tomb, they leave. And so we have to get out of our tombs. We have to get out of the old ways of doing things. We have to get out of our, oh, woe is me, the stuff that's happening to me, and head out. And even if we pick the first group of people that we go to, doesn't go off too well, again, there'll be people who do listen, who do hear, and have great ideas. And they've been waiting for you forever, like muskrat and turtle. Take a minute and talk to each other for a minute. What's your reaction to this? Okay, I'll respond again. Someone asked me, would I share a personal encounter with loved ones who have passed? I will do that as the closing story. So yes, I will get to that. So much unpacking of the gospel reading. Yep, we haven't even begun. Most of us, when we read the scriptures, we go for what we've heard before, what gives us some level of comfort, encourages us, instead of realizing every line, every word, every phrase is loaded, and that you can only dig into it and get to it with other people. Whatever we're going to do, preparation for work for justice, preparation for peacemaking, doing the corporal works of mercy, you got to do it together on a regular basis. Other people hear what our ears block. Other people, the Spirit works in everybody when the gospel is proclaimed. And what you need belongs to somebody else. So whatever I pick up, somebody else needs. Whatever somebody else hears, I need. The scriptures were meant to be proclaimed with other people who would then hold us accountable to actually put the words into practice. We know a great deal about scripture. We know a great deal about theology, a great deal about personal devotion, but working with others to actually make it a reality. The rule is, if you didn't change something together with other people, you didn't hear a thing. You may have collected it to put it into something else or whatever, but the scriptures were meant to convert us, to transform us, to realign us, to rattle our cages, pull the rug out from underneath us. And that can only be done by other people. And then together, it's like, what do you think we ought to do? And again, it usually doesn't start with what I think we ought to do. It starts with, what do you think? One of the things about having worked with the First Nations, I have no troubles up there. They are more than happy to tell me. But the people they go to first are the elders. The old people who have lived through hell and high water and back, who it's amazing they're still alive. And the people who have survived drug addiction, reservation schools, poverty, horrors, and now they're trying to survive. This world falls apart around them with the loss of land, water, the food they eat, everything. Go first to the elders, to people who nobody thinks to ask much of. And it doesn't just make you old. It's old through experience and long faithfulness. Back to Dan Berrigan again, every year, Dan would have what he called a long haul dinner. It was a high honor and privilege to be invited to dinner. 10, 12 people. He was a really good cook. And they would sit and talk about what the last year was like in very blunt terms. And then, okay, what are we going to do now for the long haul? And that's connected to what the scriptures are supposed to do to us. Resurrection is a dance. Resurrection is about rejoicing. And again, we don't do rejoice well. Again, we have to learn that we really do believe that everything is possible. Nothing is impossible. And we have to dance. We have to make music. We have to drum. We have to do things. We have to eat together. We have to do stuff. We have to learn how to play together. And that resurrection, we're supposed to be joyful people. It was Nietzsche who said, I believe in the resurrection, but I have real trouble with Christians. And somebody asked him, he was in his 90s when he answered, he said, I never became a Christian because if you look at them, they don't look like they're resurrected. They don't look like they rejoice. And so that has got to be a part of what it is, we're going to do. My own question, how do I make sure I'm not one of the dead? How do I make sure I'm alive and a source of life for others? Talk to somebody. They'll tell you right away. Anybody. It helps, if you have a friend, it helps with people, but your next door neighbor is, not bad, whoever lives down the street. People you meet in the grocery store, people you go to church with, if you've gone back, all sorts of things. Anybody will work. Usually the person that is different from you, the more different they are, the better it is. And they can tell you right off. The other thing is, again, this time it's Chardin, joy is the infallible symbol of resurrection and life. If we got to start dealing with depression, with despair, with loneliness, with self-obsession. Most of our religious practices kind of revolve around those. When in reality, what makes us alive is something that makes us move with other people, touch other people, listen to them, feed them, eat with them, visit people, and people you're not used to visiting. How do you know you're alive? Basically, other people got to tell you. There are always going to be parts of us that are dead and dying. And again, community that brings solidarity, that brings companionship, that brings friendship will be able to spot those dead places quicker than any of us. So definitely you gotta make sure that somebody else. Okay, I'm trying to catch what these are. Where are the living I should be seeking out in Pax Christi? Again, don't necessarily start with the tried and true, the people you've gotten used to, new people, other people, people who happen to just be in your neighborhood, the people you happen to run into, work with, have to deal with. They are sometimes the best folk for doing anything, coming back to life or whatever. The women went as a group to maintain motivation to have the gospel bear fruit. We have to work with others. No lone rangers. Exactly. You need at least 5 to 8 people that you talk about the scriptures with all the time. You can meet over coffee. You can meet over beer. You can meet over red wine, white wine. You can do anything, but it's got to be on a weekly basis where you drink the word of the Lord, which gives life, as well as chew on the word of the Lord, and they will make things happen. Our God is a community, at least three. And so we need to be a community in absolutely everything we do. Somebody said, if you have come here to help me, you're wasting your time, right? But if you've come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, let's work together. That is the attitude, definitely, we have got to have towards everyone and everything. Reach out to the homeless, especially the mentally ill. I would say, rather than go look for a group, walk in your neighborhood. Next time you go to the grocery store or something, take the bus. Go and do something in a part of the city you have not used to. Go to a new farmer's market. Go to a new church. There's plenty of people around there. The first step is learning to see. Peter couldn't see. He looked in the tomb. He saw the nice folded, things, the napkin and whatever folded up. He couldn't see and went back home. When we go out, we have got to learn to see. One of the things I used to do when I lived in New York, which is a long, long time ago, I would sit on the floor in the bus station at Grand Central and in the train station and just watch the world. We need to do that. We have to learn to see who's really there and who lives there, who visits there, who is there because they have nowhere else to go. Just look around. And again, if you are doing the scriptures with a group, you'll have plenty of ideas and suggestions on, okay, where do we start? And you got to meet together and talk about the scriptures for a little while before you get to the what are we going to do bit. We are a resurrection people, not a crucified one, but our own liturgy does not reflect that. Well, I hate to tell you, you're crucified too. The resurrection don't come without the crucifixion. Crucifixion is not the stuff that's difficult that we deal with. That's life. Crucifixion is when other people go after you because you're working for justice, because of who you're hanging around with, because who you're in solidarity with and stand up for, and that you are causing people to react to the preaching of the gospel. Yes, we are crucified first, and then we are raised from the dead, and then we go back and do it again. And that there is always going to be that pattern. But crucifixion is not, everybody suffers, everybody gets old, everybody gets sick, everybody experiences injustice and sometimes violence from others. But the crucifixion is people target you. They go after you and make you suffer for your care for others, your solidarity with others, being in the wrong place at the wrong time because of them, corporal works of mercy, all of that kind of stuff. Yes, we are crucified people all the time. We have to start with that. You hang around with the people who suffer. You hang around with the people who know injustice and inequality. You hang around with those people. You do learn what resurrection is, and you learn how grace operates, and you learn how to live in the midst of it all. So yeah, little crucifixion going to go a long way, along with resurrection. Our liturgy doesn't do it, but our liturgy doesn't do much anything right now. We need a little, my rule is at this point, forget in-house church stuff. You're going to worship. Who you worship with is absolutely essential. The fact that you do worship is actually, is essential, and that you do it on a regular basis. But again, you have to make sure that you don't spend all your time working on in-house church. Church is people. If we change and other people change, eventually church will get around to it. But they are not, obviously, right now, the leaders. At least in my humble opinion. Okay, going to end with two stories and else somebody has something to say. Speak now or forever hold your peace in your chat. Somebody said solidarity, not charity. Yep, everybody says that. What we do, somebody said, we don't even know what charity is. Charity is our excess. Charity is like, I don't need this, you can have it. It's all that sort of thing. I don't remember who said it. I think it's Jack London. Not Jack London, who was a writer, who said, charity is the bone you throw the dog when you're as hungry as the dog. That's charity. If you start there, then you might get to solidarity, because then not only is it the bone you throw the dog, it's you move in the doghouse and make sure that they get more than the one bone. You make sure that there's food and clothing and shelter and healthcare and medicine and water and education and dignity along that goes with it. Yeah, definitely solidarity. If somebody, highest compliment I ever got was, oh, you're one of them. And it had nothing to do with church. So the people you hang around with, them in solidarity, they're the folk that are community. They're the folk that are the body of Christ. They are the people who teach us. They're the ones we got to make friends with quick. I know a few of them, luckily. Few of them are watching from here. I'm going to tell two stories. One happened, the first story is about Henry Thoreau, David Thoreau. So it happened about about the 1850s, 60s, somewhere. Of course, he was known for, hanging out in the woods. He only hung out for about a year in the woods. And the story is told that one day somebody slipped a note under his door. And the note was very simple, come for coffee tomorrow, and the name. So the next day, Thoreau left his little wooden, cabin area and knocked on the door of a farmhouse. And a man in about his 70s let him in, and they had morning coffee. And they sat down at an old wooden table in the back of the farmhouse. Window was open. He'd made oatmeal and biscuits and fruit and coffee. And they sat there and ate for a little while before the man started talking. And he said, I got something to tell you, Henry. He said, something really strange happened to me. And he said, it starts back a long time ago, at least 12 years. He said, my land has an old apple orchard. He said, it's got 4 or 5 major kinds of apples, some of them very rare. He said, and that's what we've lived on for 3 generations. Cider, apple pies, all sorts of things. He said, apples are in our blood. He said, well, about 13 years ago, we got a blight, and it attacked the apple orchard and attacked all the trees. They came in and said, anything that has been affected has got to be either cut down or burned. He said, it destroyed us. This had been our life for generations. He said, but we had to. He said, we cut up a lot of it for firewood. On the older trees, we decided, well, maybe we can make some furniture. We cut some long planks, but the rest of them that were too diseased, we had burned. He said it broke our hearts. He said, one of the real old trees I was kind of attached to, and I got enough long planks to make the table that we're sitting at having breakfast right now. That was 12 years ago, and we've been using it ever since. He said, I love this table. He said, we've lived and died around it. We fought around it. We celebrate around it. This table means everything to me. And he kind of smoothed his hand over the wood like he was caressing it. And he said, and then last week, something very strange happened. He said, this table has been sitting in my kitchen for 12 years. Before that, it was part of an apple orchard for the last 3 generations. And as I was sipping my coffee after finishing my oatmeal, a hole opened up right in front of me. I moved the oatmeal bowl aside and watched. It was about the size of a quarter. Then it was like the size of a 50-cent piece. And I put my glasses on and watched it. And something came out of it. It emerged out of it. And it was alive. It took me a minute to realize it was struggling to move. It was a moth. It was pale pink, little silver, and it was about the size of my thumb and forefinger. And it flitted around the table and then headed for the open window. And it was gone. That thing had been in my table for 12 years. And before that, it had been in a tree for 3 generations. I don't even know what it was, but it's alive. Don't you think it's strange? And Henry sipped his coffee and said, I agree. I've never heard about that ever happening. You don't know what it is? No, he said, I've been looking at the hole. He said, now I'm checking the table, see if there's anything more getting ready to come out. And they sat there for a while, finished the second cup of coffee. And then the man said, you know, Henry, I'm beginning to wonder what's been hiding in me. What's been dead in me all these years. Probably stuff I picked up from my family and my granddad or my, you know. And is it going to start to come out today? Is it going to fight its way through? Is it going to flutter around? And something in me is going to take wing? And Henry just sort of nodded and said, wow, that's the best breakfast I've had in ages. I'm going to go back and look at the table in my house, his one-room house. And then I'm going to go take a look at what's getting ready to be born in me. That's the first story, 150 years ago. This one's a little harder to tell. This one is connected to what has happened only in the last couple of months. It's very much like the first story. Diane and Ortiz and I have been friends for ages and ages, and we get together sometimes just once a year, twice a year, and usually over breakfast. And the last time we got together, we got together over breakfast and started with coffee and all kinds of things. And we were talking about what's going on with life. How are you? And these breakfasts have a tendency to go on for about 2 or 3 hours. And we talked about what work was. And I was working for her at the time and writing stuff for her. And she said, you know, I hate to say this, she said, but I gotta tell someone. She said, I feel like I've been living in a tomb. In fact, I feel like I've been living in the tomb for ages. She said, I'm in there, it's dark. There's some shadows, not a streak of light. The stone is wedged in tight. There's a dead body. That's the only thing in the place with me. It's all wrapped up. I have no face. I have no sense of who it is. I tell myself it's God, but basically it's a dead body. And I might as well be dead. I just keep waiting for somebody to roll away the stone so I can get out. We talked for a while about how do you get out from the inside? You know, it's not something you can do for yourself. Somebody else has got to do it for you. When we left and hugged, she said, pray I get out. And that was who we prayed for each other. And of course, Diana died just recently, and she's haunted me and what she said. And one day when I was praying about her, my friend Bill McNichols has written an icon that is Diana Ortiz, which is beautiful. And I'm trying to write a description of the icon that will be in a book that Bill and I are doing a book together called I Call You Friends. It's icon, it's of all sorts of people, and Diana will be in it. So I was trying to write something about Diana to describe the icon and what it means. And that night, before I fell asleep, I had a dream. It's a waking dream. They're the most dangerous kind. I was in the tomb like she was. I was in the tomb, it was dark, and there was a dead body with me, a corpse, all wrapped up, and just me and the dead body. And I remembered, she said, I know it's Jesus, but it doesn't make any difference. And as I was sitting there in my dream, the dead body sat up. No clothes on its face was revealed, and looked around as though the person was looking for me, not just looking for what was going on, but looking for me. And of course, it was the crucified, the risen one coming back to life. Sat up, stood up, never said a word. Came over to me, grasped me by the hand and grabbed me, like in the gospel when Jesus grasped Peter and mother-in-law by the hand and raised her up. And together we walked out of the tomb. No stone. It was still dark, almost morning, but the stars and everything were out. We stood in the dark and looked at the sky as the first rays of light started to come. And then finally, he spoke. And he said, I am alive. You are alive. Peace be with you. And I'm sorry I can't stay. I gotta go. Too many people need to hear these words. Too many people need to hear me. Too many people need to see me. So I have to go. But you have to go too. You have to go. People need to hear your words. People need to see you, touch you. So we both got to go. And he turned, dropped my hand, and started to walk away and said, you, that way, not with me, go. And I stood there for a minute, and as he walked away, he turned and said, I am alive. You are alive. Peace be with you. Catch you later, love. Remember, catch you later, love. And off he went. And in that moment, I realized I'd gotten caught again. And getting caught this way by life and death and resurrection in the word, in the scriptures, and those who believe in him. That kind of being caught is more contagious and stronger than any virus, anything else. And the words keep echoing. Be peace. Peace be with all of you. That is what the word is that everyone wants to hear. So go, rejoicing. Peace be with you. Be peace. Catch you later, love. Catch you later. Take a minute. And see if you want to say anything to anybody, to everybody listening. Someone wrote, weary of speaking about all the things that we're still trying to painfully navigate with family members, things that challenge all my spiritual practices. Our paths seem so divergent. All of our families are a wreck. Even the ones who look like they're hanging together pretty good. Everybody is dealing with something. Some of it is old trauma, old experiences, old deaths, things that we can't undo. And it does. Our paths are divergent. Family is who we're connected to by blood. Friends are the family that we're connected to by blood and guts and suffering and hope and love. You do have one of those families too. Part of dying is letting go of hopes and expectations, just dealing with death, all the things that will not be, all the things we'd hoped for, whether it's a relationship with a family member, it is not going to be now. And undoing what has been done, you can't undo it, but you can transform it. I've had quadruple bypass, and I have two new hips, one just lately and one 11 years ago. That happens to our bodies, but it also happens to our souls and pieces of our hearts. Everything can be healed. Somebody else usually helps you do it. And God does the healing, as one of the rabbis would say, but the best and the fastest way to get healed is to heal somebody else. When we realize what others are going through and we can do something for them, then we're healed. Someone had put a story of meeting people that they told of meeting migrants crossing in the desert. And one of them said, do you have any food? I'm really, really hungry. And the group they were talking to said, no, I'm sorry. We don't have any food, but we do have some water. We'll give you some water. Basically, everything in us is healed and transformed with and for and by others. That is the only way we can get out from under. And there's always somebody there, like Peter, who couldn't see. Sometimes we can't see who's right beside us. And we like Diana, I'm sure most people, they knew Diana had been through hell. But when they looked at her, they never knew how much she still suffered and what was going on, except those who were closest to her. We all bear terrible scars and open wounds, but we're here to help each other get home. May you all have the openness to hear the good news and the courage to go forth. When we tell each other hope, resurrection, life, laughter, it triggers in us the memories we need. And it's like, okay, then we can leave a tomb and somehow go home. I'm trying to get to the messages and it won't move. Can anybody else read those messages? Supposedly there are 15 messages and I can't get to, oops, no. We only have a few more minutes.
What's the last one there?
My last one is give your peace to all we desperately need it.
And there's a thank you.
Yeah, for sharing this story,
Okay.
the waking dream. That's the last one I've got, just those 2 words. Thanks for sharing that powerful waking dream.
There's a lot of messages of gratitude. And then Kathy says, give us your sure knowledge of your presence and power, God, so we can walk out of the tomb and do your work of peace with justice.
Share your working dreams and ask people. There are many, many Jewish stories where if you sit down with a stranger, you meet with somebody, you strike up a conversation, ask them their dreams. We live on each other's dreams as well as our own.
There's another note here from Pierre. Deanna's experience as you have described it sounds like a dark night of the soul. Thank you for sharing that detail.
You only dream best and strongest in the dark. My Nana used to always say, only those who walk in darkness ever see the stars. And she'd say, go out at least once a week and stand in the dark and look up at the stars and know that they are as much a part of life and the dark is as good as the light. Well, we have exactly 2 minutes. May you take a moment, look at all the pictures in your gallery and say, peace be with you. Be peace. Catch you later, love. Go in peace. Catch you later, love.